Welcome to Stillness and Saints, a quiet series marking the men and women remembered in the Anglican liturgical calendar. Tonight we come to Gregory Dix, commemorated on the 12th of May. He lived in the 20th century, dying young at only 50 years old, and yet he left behind one of the most influential works of Christian scholarship in the last 100 years. Before we come to his ideas, let's sit with who he was. George Eglinton Alston Dix was born in Woolwich, South London in 1901. He was educated at Westminster School and went to Merton College, Oxford, to read history. After a short period of ordination training at Wells Theological College, he returned to Oxford as a tutor and lecturer at Keble College, but his heart was drawing him elsewhere. In 1926, he joined the Benedictine community at Perthshire, shortly to become Nashdom Abbey in Buckinghamshire, taking the name Gregory. From that point on, he was Dom Gregory Dix, monk, priest, and scholar. Nashdom Abbey was an Anglican Benedictine community and a deliberately Anglo-Catholic one. The monks lived a full round of monastic offices, matins, lauds, vespers, and compline, day after day, year after year. It was this immersion in the liturgical prayer, as much as his historical research, that shaped everything Dix wrote. He was not a scholar who observed worship from the outside. He was a monk who prayed it from the inside, and that made all the difference. During the Second World War, Dix spent 2 years away from Nashdom, looking after an Anglican parish in Beaconsfield, whilst his brother served as a military chaplain. He kept the offices, cared for the congregation, and continued his writing. He was elected to the Church of England's convocation in 1945 and became the Prior of Nashdom in 1948. He was, by all accounts, a man of extraordinary energy, wit, and intellectual force, described by the Bishop of Oxford, then Kenneth Kirk, as his closest friend and the most brilliant man in the Church of England. In 1945, Dix published The Shape of the Liturgy, and Anglican worship has never been quite the same since. His central argument was both simple and profound. What matters most in the Eucharist is not the words, but the shape. He identified what he called a fourfold action, rooted in what Jesus did at the Last Supper. He took bread and wine, he gave thanks over them, he broke the bread, and he gave them to his disciples. Offertory, prayer, fraction, communion. This pattern, Dix argued, was the irreducible shape of Christian Eucharistic worship across every tradition and every century. Dix's fourfold shape had a sweeping historical ambition. He traced it through the earliest Christian communities, through the Syrian and Egyptian liturgies, through Rome and Jerusalem, through the medieval development of the Mass, through the Reformation and the Prayer Book. At every point he was asking the same question: what is actually happening here? What is the Church doing when it worships? His answer was always the same: it is enacting the shape that Jesus himself gave it on the night before he died. The shape of the liturgy was not a dry academic text. It was written with wit, passion, and a polemical edge that made it as compelling to read as it was controversial to engage with. Some of his historical arguments have been challenged and revised in the decades since, but the questions he asked about the relationship between words and actions in worship, about the continuity between the early church and the present, these questions remain alive and generative. The book runs to nearly 800 pages, and it rewards every one of them. Dix's influence on actual worship has been enormous also. The liturgical reforms that reshaped Anglican, Catholic, and many Protestant services in the second half of the 20th century were all, in various ways, shaped by his thinking. the offertory procession, the peace, the breaking of bread as a distinct liturgical moment. These practices, now familiar across many traditions, owe a significant debt to the arguments Dix made in 1945. He did not live to see most of this. He died, unfortunately, in 1952, aged 50, of intestinal cancer. He was buried at Nashdom Abbey. The Church of England commemorates Gregory Dix on the 12th of May, the day of his death in 1952. He is remembered as a priest, monk, and scholar. His feast is a commemoration in the common worship calendar, an optional observance, but one that marks a figure of genuine significance to the way of Anglicans, and many Christians beyond Anglicanism understand and practice worship. Nashdom Abbey itself later merged with Elmore Abbey in Oxfordshire, where the Benedictine life continues to this day. Gregory Dix closes the shape of the liturgy with a passage that has become one of the most quoted in all liturgical literature, reflecting on what ordinary Christians have done Sunday after Sunday, century after century. He writes, "Was ever another command so obeyed? For century after century, spreading slowly to every continent and country and among every race on earth, this action has been done in every conceivable human circumstance, for every conceivable human need. Let those words settle. The Eucharist for Dix was not primarily a text to be read, it was an action to be done, again and again, without end." Now, what might Gregory Dix offer to those of us seeking to live faithfully today? Perhaps this, that worship is not primarily about finding the right words, but about entering the right shape. When we gather at the table, when bread is taken, thanks are given, the loaf is broken, and the gifts are shared, we are not inventing something new. We are doing what the Church has always done, what Jesus himself did. Dix invites us to receive worship not as a performance we put on, but as an action we step into, one that has been going on for 2,000 years and will continue long after we are gone. For further reading, the texts on the screen are a good place to start. Thank you for being here. Next time we'll be looking at Matthias the Apostle on the 14th of May. Good night and God bless.